And I could have written it down before I even went out in the district. And I think one of the guys whose plant I was at, about 50 people that work at this plant, he said, quit killing the entrepreneurs in America. And what they're seeing is this. I don't care where I'm at, what part of the district or what type of business. And again, I represent from very small to very large. I represent the largest washing machine plant in the world is in this district, at Whirlpool and Clyde. And if you think about solder manufacturing, right at Archbold, or if you go to Central Foundry in Defiance, you go to Napoleon at the Campbell Soup, which is the largest type of plant of its type in the world, or you go to Fremont with Heinz, which is the largest ketchup factory in the world of its type. But folks out there are all saying the same thing. And, and when you, again, I go, before I even talk to the folks, I can write down what they're going to tell me. But, number one, we've got this cap and trade legislation that's out there that passed the House a year ago in July. And it's the if this bill would pass the Senate, it would be the largest increase in energy costs ever in American history. The President said in 2008 that under this cap and trade that electricity rates would skyrocket in America. Ohio would be particularly hit hard because, again, we're a manufacturing state and we get 87% of our energy is from coal. Indiana next door gets 94% of their energy is from coal. And the reason I always say that is because I've got a lot of people that work from the Williams County line all the way down through Mercer County that are working in Indiana or vice versa. The Heritage Foundation did a study last year, and I kind of asked if they could do it. I said, could you check to see and rank all 435 congressional districts where we would rank if cap and trade would be passed? Out of the top 20 hardest hit districts in the United States, 16 are in Ohio and Indiana. The two hardest hit districts are the two northeastern Indiana districts. The hardest hit in Ohio, you're in it. You're in the hardest hit district if the bill becomes law. The second area, going right with the cap and trade, if you talk about energy, is a story that really didn't get a lot of press 2 weeks ago. It was on the front cover of the Wall Street Journal that China has now become the largest energy consumer in the world. 5 years earlier than had been predicted. Why is that important? The more energy that you have, the more jobs you're going to have through manufacturing. Their goal is by the year 2025 is to be the largest economy in the world. And I hate to tell you this, they're going to make it before then. Because we're not competing. And so when you look at what's happening in China, especially on the energy side and what we're doing in this country, we're going to have less energy while they have more. And also at the same time, the Chinese have also alerted the world that they are not going to export certain minerals anymore. They're going to keep them all there. And these are certain minerals that you have to have in certain manufacturing in the world. Or they'll become the sole area where that will be done. So when we look at cap and trade, energy, and especially when we talk about, and of course on the healthcare side, there's not one person in this room who would have agreed that we need to do something about healthcare. But now as people have really started seeing what's in the healthcare legislation, and especially businesses, I talked to one larger business, and not in our district, but outside the district, that one of their divisions is going to cost them $30 million to implement the healthcare legislation. That's $30 million not going to be putting back into the company, and also keeping people employed. So, again, small businesses are worried about the cap and trade, they're worried about the healthcare legislation, they're worried about having the second highest corporate tax rates in the world, and they're also worried about the regulations that are coming out of Washington. And so you put all these things together, you talk about the debt and the deficit, because of course that's going to hurt small businesses or any business, because they're going to have to borrow against the federal government. Before I came back a week ago Friday, I asked the Congressional Budget Office Director if he could come over to my office. I had this question I had to ask. I said, when I now serve on Energy and Commerce, and that's the committee where the healthcare legislation could come from, and also the cap and trade, but I came in right after the vote, so I had to leave the committees I was on. But I served on budget, and I asked Elmendorf, who's the CBO director, to stop by. I said, you got to help me with the discrepancy. Why is this? Because right now the United States is $13 trillion in debt. $13 trillion in debt. We owe foreign countries now $4 trillion. We owe the Chinese just about $1 trillion, what we owe them on debt. But I said, why is it that you say we're going to be $20.3 trillion in debt by the year 2020, while the Treasury Department just came out with numbers saying that we're going to be not $20.3 trillion in debt, but that we're going to be $26 trillion in debt. That's $5.7 trillion difference. So they're going to be revising their numbers and looking at them again this month, and we're going to find out. But the bad thing about it is, I don't care if it's $20.3 trillion in debt or $26 trillion in debt, we can't afford it. Because even with the $20.3 trillion in debt, we're going to be paying best case scenario, $2 billion a day just to pay interest on the national debt by the year 2020. Now, when I say the best case scenario, this is what the best case scenario is. Not that we're $20.3 trillion in debt, but all these things have to happen just to be at the $2 billion level. All of the tax cuts for everybody have to be extinguished. Everybody's taxes are going to have to go up. I mean, up. The death tax, which is right now at 0 this year, and if Congress doesn't do something by the end of the year, it goes all the way back to where it was 10 years ago. And that's at the $1 million exemption level with a 55% tax after that. And as I try to explain to folks that aren't, and unfortunately, only 1.75% of Americans now are farmers, that they need to go to a county fair and see how much a combine costs with one head today, or a tractor. It won't take very long before if a farmer passes away, they're going to have to liquidate farms just to pay for it. The alternative minimum tax out there, the AMT. Congress has been for years doing what they call an AMT patch. So, because this thing started in the late 60s to pick up a few families in America that didn't pay tax because they gave a lot of it in charitable and things like that, and they said, well, everybody needs to pay tax. What's happened though, it's coming down to the brackets, and now it's right in the middle class. That patch has to be extinguished. That means everybody pays the alternative minimum tax now. Finally, which was not addressed in the health care bill, we have to pay doctors to see Medicare patients. That's important, because why would you want to be a doctor and not get paid to see a patient? Before the bill was passed, we were told that, and they didn't take it up in the bill, they said we'd worry about that later, and I understand why now. They said it was $207 billion to pay doctors, what they call the doc fix. After the bill passed, the health care bill, they said, oh, we made a mistake, it's actually $276 billion. So that would be $276 billion over $250 billion that we would not pay doctors to see Medicare patients. You have to take all that scenario just to be at $2 billion a day. So what I'm saying is that $2 billion a day interest payment is going to be much, much, much higher if we don't get this under control.